Hi, everyone. We're so glad you're joining us today for this podcast. And we are today talking about toxic stress, fasting, and mental health. And with us today is Wendy Eroso, who is a cytologist and studies cells and has lots of really fascinating information about how our cells work in our body and why it's important that we pay attention to cellular health as we work on our toxic stress or work on healing from trauma. Welcome, Wendy.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I would love being here.
Oh, it's great to have you. Wendy and I and Amy actually all grew up together, and it's just been so fun to work on this project with you.
Thank you. I agree. I feel the same.
Okay, so I know that you and I have talked multiple times, also with Amy, about intermittent fasting. And I'm going to let you kind of take the lead on this and talk a little bit about how what you think is a reputable way to learn about it. Keeping in mind that we are not offering medical advice to anybody, we are sharing information that we've acquired through our learning and reading and studying. And feel free to do or not do anything that we're talking about today. Thanks, Wendy. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about intermittent fasting.
Well, one of the principles around intermittent fasting is to sort of cleanse your body from the toxins that are currently in your body. So we are feeding ourselves and putting food into our body all the time. And so when we do an intermittent fasting, the first thing is you kind of just help your body clean that out. You don't, by not putting anything else in, your body works on, metabolizes, and flushes out some of the toxins.
So, when we're not constantly eating, the body has a chance to kind of um, get rid of some of the toxins and extra things.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the next part is that, of course, one of the things from fasting is that it can help when we're getting rid of those toxins and everything. It can help us try to restore our body back into homeostasis or more balance. And a lot of people are kind of afraid of doing intermittent fasting because they think they might get hungry or feel dizzy or have a headache. And that might be true because if your body's has too much, for example, carbohydrates or sugar stored up, and all of a sudden you take the sugar away, your body's like, wait, it gets used to processing this sugar. You have conditioned your body to process sugar. So when it's taken away, it has all this extra mechanisms for processing sugar that's not there. And that can cause you to kind of have a headache or feel a little funny physically. But it's nothing to worry about. Your body will, over a short period of time, just tell those mechanisms, we don't need you anymore, or we don't need you today, and you'll be able to flush them out of your body. But drink water to do that. That will help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I can remember talking to you one time about how you were doing a little lengthier fast, and you said that one thing that you noticed helped you when you had a headache or you weren't feeling well because your body was craving sugar or carbs, that you use some Himalayan salt and water and drink that. Why?
Yes.
Why is that helpful?
Well, because normally you have your the food you normally eat has electrolytes in it. It has um, things that have positive and negative charges in it, and the water you drink has that as well. But sometimes people that go on fast try to drink distilled water, which gives them nothing charged coming into their body. And so having a little Himalayan salt or some kind of electrolyte balance supplement is useful during fasting. I mean, I would say you don't really need it when you're having a regular diet that has those things in it of food. But when you're fasting, you don't really need the electrolytes for a couple of days, but maybe if you're doing 3 or more days, you might want to start using something like that to make sure I'm balanced. It can be dangerous to fast um, without having electrolytes. Your body needs to be electrically balanced.
Right. And I think a lot of people these days are familiar with intermittent fasting. We would advise that you check with a medical professional before you undertake any lengthy fast at all, which would be more than 24 hours. But the intermittent fasting, it is there's so much information about how it can be done. And I remember when you introduced me to Jason Fung's book. He's a Canadian doctor, and he has a book. I can't remember what it's called actually, but it was so good.
Yeah, he has a couple of books. One is called The Obesity Code, and that's the first one I read.
Hmm.
And he's a nephrologist that works with a lot of diabetic patients. So he also has a book called The Diabetes Code, and he has a book called The Cancer Code as well. And he discusses how intermittent fasting can help improve those conditions, all of those conditions, diabetes and cancer, and anything surrounding sugar imbalances or
Hmm.
weight, those kind of things.
And I've got to tell you, having the way you explained how intermittent fasting, which can be 4 hours of fasting or 6 hours of fasting,
Hmm.
intermittent fasting actually helps our cellular processes in terms of flushing out those things that are not necessary in our cell. And I think about how much different advice there is nutritionally and in terms of an eating plan or a diet plan. And it makes so much sense to me that our cells need some absence of food in order to repair and do what they need to do. And I think about, I have a cousin who's actually a bodybuilder, and she's
Yeah.
amazing. I think she just won first in the nation in her category or something.
Wow.
And yeah, and she eats several small meals a day, but that's under the direction of a trainer, and that's
Hmm.
it for purposes of being able to achieve her goal as far as bodybuilding. I find it hard to intermittent fast, i.e., more than 2 hours, because I love to eat, and I have a really hard time with sugar. And I've noticed that if I can go without it for 3 days, that it is much easier after that. But those first 3 days are so hard for me.
I agree. I agree.
Hmm.
I've experienced the sugar headache myself when I've tried to refrain from sugar and also from caffeine as well. I've
Right.
received both those. Do you want me to walk through a little bit what happens over a few hours of fasting?
Absolutely. That would be so helpful.
Okay, so when the first few hours, 4 to 8 hours that you're fasting, your blood sugar drops a little bit and all the foods left your stomach, and your body kind of at the end of that time stops producing insulin, which is it can be a good or bad thing depending on the state of your health. But for if you're a little overweight or um, have a hormone imbalance, that could be a really good positive thing. So that's why in Jason Fung's book he discussed don't snack in between meals, because what he explains is that there's this curve for sugar where you eat and it goes up and then it needs to come down, right? And if you eat every 2 hours, it goes up, 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 up. And that would be excellent for someone that is it your cousin
Cousin,
that,
yeah.
yeah, that's training, because she's burning all of that. But if
Hmm.
you're not, if you're like a regular citizen like me, I'm not burning enough calories or sugars or to keep eating every 2 hours.
Yeah.
So what happens is your insulin goes up and then it comes back down. And if you extend the amount of time that you eat in between, that coming back down and going even under that curve, so it goes up over the curve and comes down, and then when you eat again it comes back up, and that kind of keeps you in balance, right? So continuous eating or eating in short intervals just keeps raising a hormone like insulin, which is not productive for you, and it has nowhere to go. The cells are full, so it goes to fat cells, and that's what happens. But the next step is that um, after about 12 hours, your body starts generating a little more human growth hormone, which we like because it has anti aging properties. And it's burning and processing all that food still. And then after about, I don't know, 14 to 18 hours, you start having some of your fat burned as energy if you've been fasting for 14 to 18 hours, because now it's looking for a source for energy and doesn't have one. So it starts turning to the fat. That's the part I like. And then,
So it turns to fat to source energy. So the fat
yes, your
cells, it
body.
goes to the fat cells to source the energy after 14 to 18 hours.
Right, because it has no more food left. And
Okay.
but the thing that's catching the most attention right now is its benefits of something called autophagy. Now, autophagy is the body's way of cleaning up damaged cells in order to regenerate newer, healthier cells. What happens is our body's supposed to normally have this process going all the time, where we have a balance of we eat something, our cells grow old or die, and then there's a process called autophagy that comes in and eats those cells, and it takes anything that's still working in the cell, like a mitochondria or some kind of organelle, and it repurposes it and creates a new cell with those working parts inside. So it's a very efficient system.
I have
Or it just gets rid of it.
sorry, I have a
Good.
question, except
Yeah,
for I just forgot my question. um, oh, can you please spell out autophagy? Because when you first started talking about it, I I could I thought I knew how it was spelled, but I wanted to look it up. And so maybe you could spell it out for our listeners. So if they're
sure.
interested in learning more about it, they'd know how to look it up.
Sure. It's spelled Autophagy. Autophagy. I
Okay,
feel like I was
thank
in a
you.
spelling bee just then. Autophagy. I said
You
it
are
afterwards.
you are in a spelling bee and you won.
Thank you. Woo! All right. So this is what I want to talk about because this is the super exciting thing that people want in their life. And what this is the process, like I said, to restore and regenerate new cells. And we all want that. But it doesn't do that by just cleaning up old cells and getting rid of them and throwing them in the trash or having them excreted through our body. It creates new cells to replace them. So this happens around 18 to 24 hours after you have stopped eating. Autophagy is able to then kick into place. And the reason is that normally this happens. Also, exercise is a huge something that hugely increases autophagy and helps it skyrocket. But the reason is because autophagy is a digestive process. So it kind of, whenever, if you keep bringing food into your body, it's not a life necessity process of digestion. So if I start eating, my body's like, oh my gosh, here comes some donuts, or hopefully it's not donuts, here comes an apple, or here comes some healthy meal. And I have to digest it. So it takes autophagy takes a back seat to that imperative process
Right.
of digesting food, and so it kind of slows down and works minimally. But when you deprive your body of food and there's no more digestion left, your body's completely digested everything between 18 and 24 hours after you're done eating, but closer to 24, most people feel. Then that digestive process can kick in because there's resources for it. It can be used, and that cleans up all our old cells. So if we're eating every 2 hours, we're eating 6 times a day, or we're just eating excessive amounts, then we're doing that using old, tired cells. And it
Right.
shows on our body. It shows in our wrinkles. It shows in our skin elasticity. It shows in our digestive capabilities. It shows in our thinking processes. And if we fast and deprive ourselves, autophagy digestion can set in and clean up the old cells. And all of a sudden, people are showing in studies are showing that people's wrinkles are being reduced. Those old cells that have been trying to
Mhm.
use to keep skin elasticity are gone, and they're creating new cells, even at 51 years old, like I am. And
Mhm.
so that is extremely helpful and valuable for your system. So I love autophagy, and also the increase that intermittent fasting does for growth hormone. I'm all about it.
I think it's so interesting how autophagy can also help our mental processes. And for mental health, we want all of our cells to be operating efficiently. And you described something a few minutes ago when you're talking about autophagy, and it's almost like um, the the autophagic process. I don't know if that's a word, but that process actually then digests old cells and gives the body an opportunity to function with new cells. And I think also about how we talk so much in America about brain fog, and I think there are a ton of things that contribute to brain fog. And I also believe that when we are not eating continuously, that allows for better mental health because our brain is made up of cells, and the healthier our cells are, the healthier we will be. So
Yes.
I'm thinking about I hardly ever intermittently fast. And what I mean by that is that I tend to eat whenever, and I eat late at night. And so even when I go to sleep and then wake up, I don't have a very long window of fasting. And I know that in like the 10th and 11th, 12th centuries, breakfast used to be called break the fast.
Yes.
And so, one of my challenges that I want to work on this month with our focus on physiological hydration, mental health, is I want to work on eating um, earlier in the evening and allowing my body the 8 hours to repair between my evening meal and my morning meal. And it's hard for me, but I really want to give that a whirl because I think it will help me.
I think that's a great idea. So, just to let you know, to give a little more incentive for moving to a sort of a longer break between meals and fasting, this autophagy process is supposed to increase by 300% if you get to 36 hours of fasting.
Wow.
And then if you go 48 hours, let's say you just do a weekend fast, let's say you do that, your immune system can start to reset a little bit, and it will decrease your inflammation because the autophagy cells can start working on the inflammation. And when you were talking about brain focus, um, what happens when you're fasting for so many hours is that maybe around, I think, 18 hours, that your ketones start to increase. And when you have ketones in your brain, that helps you focus. So some people feel a little bit of a fog at the beginning of a fast, but if they stick with it just long enough, they can have more focus. Um, so I would say that's a great way to start, is to do it overnight. Use what you've got. You're already going to go to sleep. Stop
Mhm,
at eating at 8 a.m. And in Jason Fung's book, one thing he suggests is maybe skip breakfast, maybe have two
mhm,
meals a day. So it doesn't have to be completely all something that alters your life, but maybe there's 1 or 2 days a week that you do that, or 1 day a week, or you just fast once a month, or for 1 day for 24 hours. Any amount of time will give you some health benefits.
love it. Thank you. Again, I wanna reiterate, we are not offering medical advice, and we're not
No.
offering nutritional advice. We recommend that, any extended fast be you consult with your medical professionals, and, I do recognize that certain medications are to be taken with meals, and so we are not, encouraging you to go against any kind of instruction on your medications or anything that you have been told by your doctor. Please consult with your medical team if you make distinct cut. 3, 2, 1. Please consult with your medical team if you decide you want to try some of the longer fasting and make sure that it's right for your body at this time. Wendy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
I
you.
I
I loved
love
it.
I love hearing all the things that you learn through your reading and all the information you have about our cells. If this is interesting to you, this is some of the stuff that we work on and talk about in our program, the Whole Health Lab. where we address toxic stress and trauma. And you can find us at www.mendingtrauma.com. We encourage you to continue making small steps and improving the health of your body and mind in small increments as you go along on your journey. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next week.